Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about a topic in zoology called nervous coordination. So there are two important topics in coordination. One is called neural coordination and another one is called chemical coordination. So today we are going to discuss about a part of the chapter in neural coordination. So what is the neural coordination? So there are a nervous system, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, CNS and PNS. So what is the CNS? Central nervous system, which consists of brain and spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord, which make the central nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, also called PNS. So CNS and PNS. So central nervous system, which consists of brain and spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system, which consists of nerves from the brain called cranial nerves. So cranial nerves and spinal nerves. The cranial nerves, actually the number of pairs are 12 pairs, cranial nerves, and spinal nerves. The spinal nerves are 31 pairs. So 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves, which makes the peripheral nervous system. First we will talk about central nervous system. So what is the ultimate unit of a nervous system? Means neuron. So you know that neuron, structure of neuron, you studied about neuron. So what are the things that are present in neuron? So cyton, axon, dendrites. So there is a flow of neural transmission, how the nerve impulses are transmitted. So there is one question they are asking in a NEET. What is the correct way of transmission of nerve impulses? So first, from the dendrites to it passes to the cyton to axon, then axon to the nerve ending synapse. From the synapse, another dendrite receive the nerve impulses. So this is the flow of nerve impulses. It's like a unidirectional. It passes through means of cyton, axon, and synapse to the next dendrite, next neuron. So here there is a flow of nerve impulses. So cyton, actually the cyton, which consists of, this is actually a cyton. From the cyton there is a axon. From the above the axon there is a myelin sheath. So this is a myelin sheath. The myelin sheath, if it is present, mean it is called medullated or myelinated neuron. Then next there is a nerve endings. Nerve endings. The nerve endings also called boutons. This is connected to the another neuron, or it may be connected to the muscles. That is called a neuromuscular junction. Suppose it is connected to the another neuron. This is called a synapse. So there is a gap. So this is called a synaptic cleft, a minute gap between the nerve ending and the next dendrite. So this is called a synapse. The entire thing is called a synapse. Here there is a minute gap called a synaptic cleft. So this is called a dendrites. So this is a multipolar neuron. So what are the types of neuron? It is a unipolar, bipolar, and a multipolar neuron. There is a one central nucleus surrounded by a cytoplasm. Then there is a nissel granules. Nissel granules. So the nucleus and perikaryon, cytoplasm, perikaryon, and nissel granules are found in cyton. So this is the axon. Axon covered by sheath, medullated sheath or myelinated sheath. Then there is a Schwann cells. There is Schwann cells also present in axon. So this is a multipolar neuron. So what are the types of neurons? Unipolar, bipolar and multipolar neuron. So unipolar neuron, where it is found? So generally it is found in embryos. Bipolar neuron, where it is found? It is found in retina of an eye. There is a bipolar neuron. The multipolar neuron is found in cerebral cortex. Most of the neurons in our body is a multipolar neurons. Unipolar neuron found during the embryo stage. Bipolar neurons are found in retina of an eye. Then multipolar neurons are most of the neurons. Then one of the special feature about neuron, suppose there is one accident, a 20 years age person met an accident, what are the cells are replaced, what are the cells can be replaced, which of the cells cannot be replaced. So they will give some options, which cells can be replaced, osteoblast cell, osteoblast cells, bone cells, liver cells. Then one cell is a neuron. Neuron, we can't replace a neuron. At the time of birth, how many neurons? The same number of neurons are maintained, because it does not have the property of cell divisions. So that is why neurons are same number, it can't be replaced. Again, it is not replaced by another neuron, because it never undergo cell divisions. Even sometimes what will happen at the age of after 50, what will happen, the number of neurons will be reduced, the neurons number will be reduced. So that is why, because of that leads to a memory loss. So what is the memory loss? Because of loss of neurons. Why the loss of neuron is related to Alzheimer and the memory loss? So what is the reason? Because the number of neurons are reduced. Actually our method of memory is following like what you using your mobile phone. So what is the number of dots in mobile phone? There are 9 dots. Instead of using a password, you are giving a pattern. So pattern is a kind of password. It is a root, like a memory root. The same way our brain worked on the basis of memory root or memory engram. So the memory engram or memory root, because of the junctions, the junctions are called synapse. The synapse like a dots, synapse like a dots. In cell phone only 9 dots, which we can give many types of patterns. The same way, how many synapse in cerebral cortex? In cerebral cortex alone, there is a 10 to the power of 2783000 is the number of synapse in cerebral cortex alone. Actually, cerebral cortex, only 10% of the neurons found in cerebral cortex. How many neurons in our nervous system? That is 100 billion. 100 billion neurons are found in our body. So out of the 100 billion, our cerebral cortex have only 10% of the neurons. So one neuron is connected to the another neuron by means of the junction called synapse. So based on the synapse, the number of synapse, that is the 10 to the power of 2783000 is found in cerebral cortex. These synapses act like a junction. So whenever we see any object or any activities, it is memorized in our brain like a pathway. So that is a memory pathway. So what will happen when we become an age, after the age of 50, what will happen? What are the memory root, the synapse found in the cerebral cortex will be lost. So initial starting point is lost, mean what will happen? We can't able to recollect the past activities. So that is why most of the people after, because of aging, what will happen? There is a memory loss. So at the age of 80, nearly 50% memory loss. So that is memory loss because of loss of synapse, loss of neuron. Even the number of neuron is related with the intelligence. So number of neurons, if there is a more number of neurons, there is a more intelligence. In cerebral cortex also there is a sulcus and a gyrus. So what is a sulcus mean depression, gyrus mean elevation, or we can say sulci and gyri plural. So because of the folding, cerebral cortex are made up of many folding convulsions. Because of the convulsions, if there is a more number of convulsion, there is a more number of space, more space which have a more number of neurons, so that there is a more intelligence. So intelligence are related with the number of neurons and a number of foldings in cerebral cortex, right. So in central nervous system, which made up of what are the things that are found in central nervous system. So in central nervous system basically classified into three parts, that is called forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. So what is the forebrain? Forebrain consists of what? Forebrain consists of cerebrum. The largest part of the forebrain is the cerebrum. It is also called the seat of intelligence. So cerebrum is the seat of intelligence because every process, all the process, language, everything is a memory, everything is a language spoken, whatever it is a function of the cerebrum. So cerebrum is a seat of intelligence. Even cerebrum again classified into four major parts, that is called frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital. So what is the function of frontal? So it is not a morphological divisions. It is based on the function. We can classify into four parts. These are the four parts of the cerebrum. First frontal, this is frontal, this is temporal, this is parietal, this is occipital. So frontal is responsible for the memory, language, everything is because of frontal intelligence. Parietal, all sensory information, touch, heat, pain, whatever it is, all sensory informations are passes to the parietal lobe. And the temporal lobe responsible for smelling, auditory lobe, smell and auditory hearing, olfactory lobe for smell, auditory for hearing. So hearing and for a smell, that is controlled by the temporal lobe. Then occipital lobe responsible for a vision. So vision because of occipital lobe. So these are the four areas of the brain. Based on function, it is divided into four parts: frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital. Basically the cerebrum divided into two parts structurally, that is the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So there is a nerve fiber, sheet of nerve which connect the two hemispheres, both the right and left, connected by corpus callosum. So corpus callosum which connect the both right hemisphere and left hemisphere. What is the beauty of the cerebrum? The cerebrum right part and left part. So there is a concept called right and left brain concept. So what is the right and left brain concept? Right part of the activities, right part is actually controlled by the left part of the brain. Left part, all the left part controlled by the right part of the brain. So suppose for example, the skin receptors of the left controlled by the right. So what right brain we see the left world. So whatever we see, that is left part of the world sees by the right brain, right part of the world sees by the left brain, because the optic nerves are connected. From the right eye is connected to the left brain, left eye is connected to the right brain. So right control the left, left control the right. So that is called a right and left brain concept. So all the activities of a right hand side is controlled by the left brain. So that is why because of the stroke, what will happen? The cerebral thrombosis. Because of cerebral thrombosis, that leads to stroke. Stroke normally affect one part of the body. Suppose there is a left part of the brain, because of there is a blood clot, cerebral thrombosis. So left brain is blocked, mean what will happen? Right part of the body won't function. So that is called a stroke. So the right and left brain, how it work is that there is a coordinating work, the coordination of work because of corpus callosum. Even though the right control the left and left control the right, but there is a coordination. So what is the coordination? Because of corpus callosum. So corpus callosum, which coordinate the two parts of the brain, which connect the two parts of the brain and coordinate the functions of two parts of the brain. So that is the function of corpus callosum. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. Which one is the largest part of the brain? Means cerebrum is the largest part. Then diencephalon, and forebrain also consists of diencephalon. So diencephalon, which consists of thalamus and hypothalamus. So thalamus and hypothalamus. So thalamus is control the feelings, the feeling of anger, rage, everything is controlled by the thalamus. Then hypothalamus have an important role. So what is the important role? Why it is called hypothalamus? Because below the thalamus. The hypothalamus is act as a control the endocrine system. It controls the pituitary gland, because hypothalamus also consists of pituitary. The pituitary is controlled by hypothalamus. Actually pituitary is a master gland. In turn, pituitary is controlled by the hypothalamus by producing a releasing factor and inhibiting factor. So the releasing factor, once produced, it activates the pituitary gland to produce the hormones of pituitary to induce the other glands. So inhibitory factor, once released, means it stops the pituitary hormones. So everything is controlled by the hypothalamus. So there is a coordination between the endocrine system and the neural system. So which one is act as a middleman between neural system and chemical coordination system, means hypothalamus. So hypothalamus controlling the coordinating system of chemical coordination. So neural coordination control the chemical coordination. Pituitary is the boss of all the glands, but in turn, who is the boss for a pituitary means hypothalamus, is a part of the central nervous system. So this is part of the forebrain, also called telencephalon. Then midbrain. Then midbrain is consist of what are the things that are found in midbrain. In midbrain, there is a corpora quadrigemina. Corpora quadrigemina is a midbrain. So there are 4 lobes. So the 4 lobes are corpora quadrigemina. So there is a 2 inferior colliculi and a 2 superior colliculi. So what is the function of 2 superior colliculi? For the movement of eye movement. See, for example, whenever there is a movement of aircraft or movement of letters, our head always move towards that letters. That is called visual tracking of moving object. The superior colliculi, which control the visual tracking of moving object. So our head also move along with the eye movement. So visual tracking of moving object is normally controlled by superior colliculi. Then inferior colliculi, which control the hearing. The hearing controlled by the inferior colliculi. Then hindbrain. The hindbrain consists of what are the things that are found in hindbrain? Rhombencephalon. In rhombencephalon, cerebellum, pons and medulla oblongata. These 3 are found in rhombencephalon, are also called hindbrain. So rhombencephalon, cerebellum and medulla oblongata, pons. So what is the cerebellum? It is also called a small cerebrum. Small cerebrum. Cerebellum is the largest part of the hindbrain. Cerebrum is the largest part of the central nervous system, but cerebellum is the largest part of the hindbrain. So cerebellum normally control and coordination of movements. Normally control and coordination of movements, the balance, everything, posture, everything because of cerebellum. Then pons, which transmit the impulses from cerebrum to cerebellum. So that is the function of the pons. And also pneumotaxic center located in pons, which control the stop the inspiration, the process of respiration. Once the inspiration is over, that stop the inspiration there is a pneumotaxis center that is found in pons. And finally, the last part of the rhombencephalon, that is the inferior part of the brain, that is called medulla oblongata. So, medulla oblongata is a vital node. Why it is called vital node? Because responsible for the respiration, movement of respiration. It is controlled both respiration and the circulation. So, once it is affected, the medulla oblongata is affected, mean what will happen? That leads to death. So, that is a medulla oblongata is called vital node. So, even it is a involuntary movement like coughing, sneezing, vomiting, everything is controlled by the medulla oblongata. So, these are the three parts of the central nervous system. Then peripheral nervous system, there are 12 pairs of peripheral nervous system. So, the 12 pairs, out of the 12 pairs, so which one is the longest cranial nerve? The longest cranial nerve is the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve. Then the peripheral nervous system have a three types of nerves, that is called the sensory nerves, motor nerves and mixed nerves. So, sensory, motor and mixed nerve, there are three types of nerves in the cranial nerves. Then spinal nerves have 31 pairs. So, 31 pairs of nerves which connected to the spinal cord. Then in these nerves again classified into two types, that is called autonomic nervous system and skeletal nervous system. Okay. Skeletal nervous system which control the movements, the autonomic nervous system which control the autonomic functions like controlling the internal organs. Again it is classified into two types, that is called sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So, what is a sympathetic and parasympathetic? So, sympathetic nervous system especially, it is also called adrenergic, because adrenaline is a neurotransmitter. In parasympathetic, cholinergic. So, what is the meaning for cholinergic? Mean acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. So, what is a neurotransmitter? So, here the synapse, there is a chemicals are produced. These chemical only transmit the signals. First initially nerve impulses becomes the chemical impulses, and the chemical impulses again becomes the nerve impulses. So, that chemical impulse in synapse generally, what is the neurotransmitter mean? Acetylcholine. The acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter responsible for the transmit the signals to the another neuron. But in sympathetic nervous system is a adrenaline, or we can say epinephrine, or we can say adrenaline. Adrenaline act as a neurotransmitter. There are two types of neurotransmitter. One is called excitatory and another category called inhibitory. So, excitatory means induces, inhibitory means stop the functions. So, example GABA, GABA. GABA is a inhibitory neurotransmitter, and adrenaline, acetylcholine, these are all excitatory neurotransmitter. These are the two types of neurotransmitter, right. So, in nervous system is covered by a membrane. The membranes are called meninges. So, what are meninges? There are three important membrane. One is called dura mater, then another one is called arachnoid, then third one is called biomatter. So, dura mater is the outer membrane, next to the dura mater is the arachnoid, next to the arachnoid is the biomatter, it is close to the brain. These membranes gives the protection to the brain. There is a space between the arachnoid, and the biomatter called subarachnoid space, which is filled with the cerebrospinal fluid, also called CSF. So, what is CSF? Cerebrospinal fluid. The amount of cerebrospinal fluid normally 100 to 150 ml. This cerebrospinal fluid, which gives a nourishment for the brain cells, like blood, which gives nourishment for all the cells, the cerebrospinal fluid which gives the nourishment for the brain cells. So, the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, passes through the ventricles of the brain. So, first we will finish the meninges. So what is the meninges? Meninges mean membranes of the brain. One is a dura mater, arachnoid and biomatter. Dura mater is the outer membrane attached to the skull. Then next one is the arachnoid. Next to the arachnoid is the biomatter. Inner membrane is called biomatter. So the cerebrospinal fluid is produced by the choroid plexus, which produces cerebrospinal fluid. So which passes through the brain through means of ventricles. Suppose the meninges are affected, mean the disease called meningitis because of fungal meningitis, viral meningitis. There are many types of meningitis: bacterial meningitis, fungal meningitis and viral meningitis. Brain fever, the membranes of brains are affected, means it's called meningitis. Next, the ventricles. So what are the ventricles? There are some cavities through which the cerebrospinal passes through the brain. So first one is called lateral ventricles. 1 and 2 lateral ventricles. Where it is found? It is found in cerebrum. These two ventricles. So initially there are two ventricles. These two ventricles are connected by a passage called foramen of Monro. First and second is connected to the third ventricle. By means of a passage called foramen of Monro. So first and lateral ventricle, these two are called lateral ventricles, connected to the third ventricle. Then third ventricle is connected to the fourth ventricle by means of cerebral aqueduct, which connect the fourth ventricle. Cerebral aqueduct which connect the third and fourth ventricles. Third and fourth ventricle connected by cerebral aqueduct. Next to the cerebral aqueduct, it is passes through the central canal of the spinal cord. So the ventricles of the brain, first ventricle and second ventricle also called lateral ventricles. The lateral ventricles are connected to the third ventricle by means of foramen of Monro, and the third ventricle connected to the fourth ventricle by means of cerebral aqueduct. Then the cerebral aqueduct to spinal cord. There is a central canal in the spinal cord. Then one more important point in central nervous system. Generally in brain, outer is a grey matter, inner is a white matter. Outer grey matter, inner white matter. The white color because of the medullated neurons. Because of the medullated neuron or medullary neurons, it is white in color. Here it is act as like a insulation, act as a insulator. It never transmit electrons, it never transmit elements. So it act like a insulator. So this is a medullated neurons. Inside the brain, the white matter is a medullated neuron. Outer is a grey matter, that is in brain. Whereas in spinal cord, inner is a grey matter, outer is a white matter. So for the structure of spinal cord, the spinal cord is found inside the vertebral column. Here, first one is there is an enlargement called cervical enlargement. Then one more enlargement called lumbar enlargement. So after the lumbar enlargement, cervical enlargement and lumbar enlargement, then finally it become a conus medullaris, the extreme end called a conus medullaris. After the conus medullaris is in the form of only nerve fiber. It is made up of only biomatter. It is also called filum terminale, also called horse tail, is also called horse tail. So cervical enlargement and lumbar enlargement. Then conus medullaris. After conus medullaris is in the form of only biomatter. It is also called filum terminale. It looks like a horse tail, also called cauda equina. So this is the structure of a spinal cord. The cross section of spinal cord. The cross section of spinal cord, there is two regions, posterior region and anterior region. The anterior region have a fissure. Then there is a central canal. then the grey matter is like a H shape. So this is a outer white matter, inner is a grey matter, then there is a central canal. So for example, suppose there is a reflex action, suppose there is a organ. So from the organs there is a signal passes to the spinal cord through means of a neuron called efferent neuron. So also called a sensory neuron. This is called a sensory neuron. Sensory neuron receive the signals from the organs, effector organ. This is a effector organ. Suppose when we touches any object, so what will happen, that impulses are passes to the spinal cord through means of efferent neuron, also called a sensory neuron. Here there is a neuron called a relay neuron. This is called a relay neuron. So now it passes to the spinal cord. In spinal cord there is an intermediate neuron or relay neuron. From the relay neuron or intermediate neuron, now it become a messages, orders. The orders transfer through means of the motor neuron, also called efferent neuron. So what is the efferent neuron, also called a motor neuron, which carry the messages or orders to there is a one muscles. So it is a effector organ. So it passes a message to the effector organs. So the effector organ may be a muscles. So we can pull back our hand when we touches a hot object. This is called a reflex arc. The action is called a reflex action. So what is the reflex action? A quick action. Whenever we touches a hot object, we withdraw the hand. So that when we touches a hot object, now the skin is a effector organ. So sensory neuron, it passes to the spinal cord through means of motor neuron or efferent neuron, it passes to the effector organs. So here it may be a muscle, so we pull back the hand. So this is called a reflex arc by involving three types of neuron: sensory, this one is called intermediate neuron or relay neuron, finally is a motor neuron. So this is a structure of a spinal cord. In spinal cord, inner is a grey matter, is a H shaped, then outer is a white matter. So this is a structure of central nervous system. So central nervous system which consists of brain and the spinal cord. So this is a part of the neural coordination. Actually neural coordination is a big chapter. So even how it conduct the impulses. So the property of neuron, this is called the nodes of Ranvier. The nerve impulses jump from one nodes of Ranvier to another nodes of Ranvier. It's like a saltatory principle. So what is the saltatory principle mean? It jump from one nodes of Ranvier to another nodes of Ranvier, because the medullary sheath, it never conduct impulses. So it jump from one nodes of Ranvier to another nodes of Ranvier. It's called the saltatory principle. So the function of how we transmit the impulses. Generally any neurons, inside there is a electronegative, outside is a electropositive. So electronegative is called a rest potential. Outside is a more electropositive, inside the neuron is a more electronegative. Suppose it is because of polarization. So now what will happen? It is become more positive inside and outside more negative. It is called polarization because of the depolarization. Because of depolarization, it become more positive, here is more negative. Then finally becomes again becomes a negative and positive. It's called a repolarization. So polarization are also called rest potential, more electronegative inside, outside is a more positive, and because of the depolarization, more positive inside and more negative outside, again because of repolarization, again back to the normal again stage, the rest potential. This is called repolarization, again become electronegative. So this is called the action potential created inside the neurons. That is because of a sodium and potassium pump. So there is a sodium and potassium pump, the exchange of sodium and potassium. This is called the sodium and potassium pump. How many potassium sodium exchange for a 2 potassium? Means 3 sodiums are exchanged. So 3 sodium is released out for intake of 2 potassium. So for the intake of 2 potassium, how many sodium is released out? Means 3 sodium is released out for intake of 2 potassium. So this is how the conduction of nerve impulses. For example, at the end of the nerve endings, suppose this is a nerve ending, or we can say presynaptic. This is called postsynaptic. So nerve endings also called boutons, the presynaptic region membrane, which produces many vesicles. These vesicles which contain the neurotransmitter, also which contain mitochondria. Now the chemicals are released out. The chemicals are released out into the synaptic cleft. Then here there is the postsynaptic region. It is have a receptors. So it receives the chemicals, so that nerve impulses are passes to the next neuron. So this is called a synaptic cleft. The synaptic cleft, a space between the 2 neurons. The synaptic cleft, this is a presynaptic, this one is called a postsynaptic. Here this is a neurotransmitter. A neurotransmitter, generally acetylcholine, which act as a neurotransmitter. Sometimes there is a disease called autoimmune disease. What is the autoimmune disease? A neurotransmitter released here, our immune system consider that the neurotransmitter as a foreign agent, foreign substance. So it begins to produce antibodies for the neurotransmitter of our own substance. It is actually our self substance, but our immune system mistakenly consider as a foreign substance. So that leads to a disease called autoimmune disease. So autoimmune disease, because of is a mistaken neurotransmitter considered as a foreign substance by our immune system. So it begins to produce the antibodies, so it destroys our own cells. So that is called autoimmune disease. Rheumatic arthritis, example rheumatic arthritis, multiple sclerosis, insulin dependent diabetes, these are all examples for autoimmune disease. So how the transmission of nerve impulse from one neuron to another neuron. So this is the process of the conduction of nerve impulses, right. So now we studied a part of the lesson in nervous coordination. We will see in detail in the next class. Thank you.